Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for returning to the hall promptly for the start at 11 a.m. of our third plenary this morning. The title of the session, as in our agenda, is Conflict and Diplomacy in the Middle East, but we don't, by that title, want to leave the impression that conflict is more important than diplomacy. We want, on the other hand, to emphasize the importance of persistent diplomacy in seeking to avoid and then to end conflict. It was, after all, even a theme brought up by Secretary of Defense James Mattis in his remarks informally in the Q&A session, when he reminded everybody that he considered that his job as Secretary of Defense was to do everything he could to leave the space for diplomats to operate and ensure both the prevention and ultimately, if not prevented, the resolution of conflict. And there are, sadly, however, many different conflicts taking place at present in the Middle East. And we're delighted to have three different perspectives on that theme at this plenary. And I will invite them to speak in the order in which you see them on the stage. We are delighted to have, again, at the Manama Dialogue, the Minister of Defense of the Federal Republic of Germany, Ursula von der Leyen, who has been before to the Manama Dialogue, and we welcome her back to this dialogue. For her first appearance at the Manama Dialogue, it's a real delight to have Dottoressa Elisabetta Trenta, the Minister of Defense of Italy, but it's worth looking at her CV on the app because she has been engaged diplomatically throughout her career in a number of the most challenging conflicts in the region. And it's really an honor to have also with us today His Excellency Yousef bin Alawi, the Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs in the Sultanate of Oman, probably one of the longest serving foreign ministers in the region. And we have been delighted to work closely with the Sultanate of Oman on a number of diplomatic efforts. We have a South Asia conference each year in Muscat that usefully brings together personalities from South Asia to precisely avoid conflict and exchange views. So with that preface and clarification of the purpose of this session, could I now invite the Minister of Defense of Germany, Ursula von der Leyen, to address the Manama Dialogue.
Thank you very much, John. Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, and John, thank you very much. What an honor to celebrate with you the 60th birthday of IISS. I want to thank our hosts, Bahrain, for this outstanding conference again. And it's a great pleasure to join my colleague, Elisabetta Trenta, and His Excellency on the panel. I'm delighted to be speaking again at the Manama Dialogue. After I did so in 2016, I spoke about our common concerns, for example, terror attacks in our capitals or illegal human trafficking. Today, 2 years later, we still talk about the worries we have, given the crises, conflicts, and wars in the region, but also we talk about, and we see the opportunities that the people in the region are eager to seize. That brings me straight to the topic of our panel, conflict and diplomacy in the Middle East. Let me start by giving you my German and European perspective on the conflicts. Recent years have taught us that the conflict zone of the Middle East is neither isolated nor detached. It is situated in the center of an arc of crisis stretching from the Sahel and North Africa all the way to the Gulf. Many of the conflicts are connected and interlinked. Human traffickers are running the gruesome business in the Mediterranean Sea. The sea has become a graveyard for tens of thousands of people. Political transition in Libya is very much at risk. As a result of the chaos there, the region has been swamped with weapons. The people in Yemen are suffering a humanitarian crisis of catastrophic dimension, and I want to refer to the outstanding remarks of Secretary Mattis. It is time for diplomacy now. It is high time now. After years of civil war, after suffering and misery, people demand peace and a life free from fear of war and oppression, and nothing indicates that conflicting interests could be brought to success through the ongoing use of force. Quite the contrary. There are many reasons to believe that diplomatic solutions can be found, provided that all voices are heard and that negotiations are not held about them, but with them. This can work if we all fully support the United Nations approaches. When I say all, I mean the parties to the conflicts, the countries in the region, and of course, also us neighbors. The war in Syria has reduced the country to rubble. The noise of battle is dying down, yet it will cost billions and billions to rebuild the country. I do not see Assad and his allies able to master this huge investment. The help of the international community is crucial. However, reconstruction to the profit of the dictatorship of Assad is not conceivable. To be very clear, there will be only investment into Syria if there is a satisfying political process that includes all parties. There is no other way than engaging in the peace talks of the United Nations. In this crucial phase, all those who really care about the people in Syria should pull their full weight to support the Geneva process. This is the reason why today, Chancellor Merkel, President Macron, President Putin are meeting at the invitation of President Erdogan. It is about revitalizing the Geneva process in line with United Nations Security Council Resolution 2254. In this respect, over the past year, Staffan de Mistura's efforts have been invaluable and have paved the way. And let me take the opportunity to thank him for his work. In Iraq, too, it is all about stabilization and reconstruction now, but the preconditions are different. Together with the Iraqi government and the people of Iraq, an international coalition of more than 70 countries fought and defeated Daesh. And now together, we have the chance to rebuild and reconcile the country. We all know winning peace requires security, education, economic development, and a broad investment, all packaged together in a political plan. I commend the new government of Iraq. You can count on Germany in achieving a fair internal balance that is acceptable to the people of Iraq. Germany has engaged already with 1.5 billion euros and especially supported the Peshmerga in their fight against Daesh. And we will expand our efforts. We just decided to continue our capacity building of the Iraqi security forces, and most important, we will continue our economic cooperation and offer investments focusing mainly on infrastructure. At the same time, we are engaged in close and successful cooperation with key partners in the region, such as our Jordan friends, who carry a huge burden for the security in the region and beyond. And I want to express my condolences for the death of the school children. We stand at your side. We also engage because we are convinced of the immense opportunities of this region, the creativity of a bright generation of young people, empowerment of women, at least half of the people, your cultural richness, economic growth, diversification, and many opportunities for common trade and investment. I am convinced now is the time to fully concentrate on political solution and peace processes. And these processes have to be driven by the countries of the region. And finally, people all over the region expect a good balance between security and freedom. They demand respect for human rights and dignity of each human being. Therefore, the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, the circumstances must be fully investigated and brought to light, regardless of considerable political consequences. It is a question of human dignity, but also a question of and an opportunity for credibility, trust, and transparency. And these values are the pillars of a common future that has to be built together. Ladies and gentlemen, I have come here to Bahrain not just as a European, but as your European neighbor. And as neighbors, we share each other's problems, and we are ready to find solutions together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, Minister of Defense of Italy, we invite you to take the podium.
Excellencies, ministries, military authorities, distinguished guests, let me first of all congratulate the Kingdom of Bahrain for the leadership shown in this initiative and for the wonder hospitality. And also, I'd like to thank the organizer of this remarkable event, which has rightfully become a traditional and extremely highly qualified appointment. It's for me an honor to speak before such a qualified audience, together with the prominent speakers of this panel. I'm glad to provide you with the view of Italy and the Italian defense on a topic which I deem of the utmost importance. As we all know, the majority of world conflict today, especially in the Middle Eastern region, are fought within states and not among states, as it was in the past. Moreover, they mostly don't occur among military regular forces, but with the contribution of violent extremist organizations. Their action and communication are able to influence the conflicts, independently from the strategies adopted by traditional diplomacy to stabilize critical situations. In order to understand this phenomenon, it is important to consider how digital media, I mean Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, Telegram, Skype, YouTube, and others, have been changing the way information is produced, gathered, and disseminated by a lot of users that are not traditional editors in conflict-affected societies. These new media are able to reach their target also far away from the place where information is produced, allowing a wide number of people to become actors in the conflict's dynamic, also if they are not directly and physically involved. Some characteristics of digital media influence current conflicts, both fighters and affected societies. In fact, not only the communication capacities of violent extremist organizations, but also their organization and their command and control rules depend on the way digital media are able to spread their message. In the meantime, new media have also conflict-generating and conflict escalation effects. As a matter of fact, Daesh's strategy provides us with a tangible example. Indeed, communication has been crucial to Daesh project, at least as important in achieving results as its military victories on the ground. Daesh's portrayal of its strength or even invincibility went beyond the local battlegrounds onto a regional and international scene. The result is an unprecedented impact on security, migration, economics, tourism, and political debate. The quick progress of a communication platform, the low prices of technology, and the revolution of communication-based services gave almost everybody, violent extremist organizations included, the possibility to reach and be reached with continuity and regardless of the geographical distance. New technologies introduced fresh opportunities as well as threats. To interact with people, give them a space to talk, share, and prompt common action. All these elements created tremendous occasion and yet brought additional risk. Daesh communication has not only been the space where the terrorist group has shown its project to both followers and enemies or publicized its success. It is an important part of the battlefield itself. Even beyond, Daesh propaganda has really been capable of attracting vulnerable individuals and radicalizing them. Recent studies have showed that almost 40,000 left their homes to join Daesh in Iraq, Syria, and Libya, and millions become sympathetic to their cause across the globe. Arguably, a large part of Daesh's success comes from its exploitation of gaps and flaws that we, as governments, international organizations, and civil society, left open. As a consequence, terrorist groups use propaganda as a tool through which they can assert themselves, survive, and flourish. Therefore, we need to work together, even closer, and share more, with the prime aim of turning communication from an element of threat to a tool of collective security and international stability. In this direction, among those many steps we have taken together, the global coalition against Daesh has been capable of achieving remarkable results through its lines of efforts, I mean military, stabilization, communication, counter-finance, and counter-foreign terrorist fighters. Italy is proud to be part of the global coalition, which has brought us several lessons, besides the many achievements. Indeed, a lot remains to be done, since terrorism is strong and dangerous. However, I would like to share with you the main three lessons we have learned so far from my perspective. Firstly, we have underestimated the threat. We missed in connecting the dots. Thus, we were driven by the events rather than being the bus driver. Secondly, we have understood that we, as a whole sync community, have to sit all in the same bus together and operate in a very cohesive way. The results we have been achieving so far are the most concrete demonstration of it. Third and foremost, it is a matter of fact that the only possible solution requires full local ownership, meaning that we have to invest in the involvement of both local authorities and societies, following a stepwise and inclusive approach. Inclusive approach that we have developed and are applying on a daily basis in every operational theater. Training, security force assistance, and stability policing have become our lines of force from the Balkans to Afghanistan, from Iraq to the Horn of Africa, from Libya to Niger, throughout the local population, our real center of gravity. Thanks to our soldiers and carabinieri, Italy has contributed to the training thousands of security forces, especially in Iraq, where they have been prime actors in the fight against Daesh. Within a common strategic communication perspective, we should tailor new narratives locally developed and broadcasted in order to tackle our counterparts' propaganda and finally win communities' hearts and minds. In conclusion, I will leave you with a question. Thinking locally, are we sure that all critical actors have been engaged? What could be done to bring them all on board? Thank you very much for your attention.
Minister Trenta, thank you very much. And may I now invite His Excellency Yousef bin Alawi to take the podium and address the third plenary of this Manama Dialogue. Thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. I will be speaking in Arabic and I will try to give you an image and depict the situation now, because it is an opportunity to do so, and I would like as well to pay my sympathy to Jordan for what happened yesterday or these 2 days, especially with the climate change. And I would like as well to tell you that if we do not solve this problem of climate change, this will lead to lots of catastrophes and lots of damages. Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, I know that you want to listen to what you have seen yesterday regarding the visit that was paid to the Sultanate by the President of the Palestinian Authority as well as the Prime Minister of Israel. And we would like as well to tell you that we are very keen on telling you about what we can share, because we consider that it is now time to start thinking seriously about how to put an end to the problems that do not allow the countries of the region to really live up to the development that they really deserve. We consider that the Palestinian issue is the core of all the problems that we have seen during the second half of the last century and the 18 years of the 21st century. And we have also to see how can we solve this problem and to find a future for a new generation of young persons in this area who can really live with the other generations of this world and towards the future. Based on this, we know, we understand, and we read that the state of Israel has become a state thanks to some circumstances after the Second World War. And now we see that the state of Palestine needs to be established because it has become a strategic necessity to get rid of what is called terrorism, ignorance, and delay. This is why, and based on this, we have started our modest initiative and efforts to see all these opinions that we consider very important. But we are not mediators. We are not mediators in this issue. We offer facilitations, we offer ideas that may have some novelty. This novelty that may help the two parties to be readier to go forward together in establishing the Palestinian state and achieving peace and stability, security, and stability, and to give the opportunity to the countries of the area to get rid of their commitments towards issues that have become of the past. We think that the entry point towards the future requires from all parties and all sides to get rid of the past and to let go of the past and to really cling to the future. This is why we are working within this context. I would like to tell you very clearly that we call, we request, and we affirm and confirm that the main role is mainly relying on the role of the US and what will the US president will be doing regarding the deal of the century, because we want this effort to be very successful and to lead to getting rid of all the problems that we have faced recently or during the 40, 50 years. So the Palestinian population all over the world have been suffering since 70 years. The same applies to the Israeli population. And we need to understand that it is about time to stop talking about the past, a past that we cannot transfer to the future. We need to give the opportunity to both these populations to work in a friendly manner. This is why we are saying this, and we said this to all those who we talked with, that establishing an independent Palestinian state is a strategic request. Without such a state, with all its pillars, we will not be able to reach any stability, because the Middle East forces, or the forces that are in the Middle East and in the Arab countries that are pessimistic, these forces find some justification for violence. And thus, we should not ignore these issues. And here I would like to tell you that if we follow this track, the entire world will be supporting us. And if we don't follow this track, if we remain as we are, we will not be able to expect from the world any assistance to keep things as they are and to go on with the sufferings of the Palestinian population, sufferings caused by this conflict. And here we're talking passing from society to another, from a forum to another, while the Palestinian population remains in thriving and having problems because of this situation. So this is why we think that the Palestinians have made up their mind, because the Israelis have made up their mind. They need to work together towards this future. I do not want to be lengthier. We will go on with our efforts. We will go on with the communication with both parties, and of course we welcome any further efforts coming within the same track. We call upon everybody to give themselves an opportunity to think of the future and not to think of the past and the reasons of the conflict in the past. I wanted to talk about this issue with all of you today and to be brief and to be as honest with this honesty. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Before we turn to the debate, let me just recall one point from each of the presentations. I thought it fascinating that Minister van der Leyen recalled that there is now a meeting taking place in Istanbul to discuss the Syrian issue, and of course the diplomacy around the Syrian issue has had many diplomatic capitals and many formations, Geneva, Astana, Istanbul, and the like, and we might wish to discuss which one of these four will work or how they can be organized all together in the same direction. I thought it interesting that Minister Trenta reminded us of the way in which Daesh and other organizations use social media to magnify conflict. Their industrial use of it creating more combatants, often ill-informed about the situations in the countries in which they operate or to which they deploy. And yesterday, of course, we had His Majesty King Abdullah of Jordan reminding us yet again of the centrality of the Palestinian issue. Yesterday, we had a fascinating set of meetings that took place in Muscat, and today it's a great privilege for the Manama Dialogue that we have received the first public report from the Sultanate of Oman on this new effort to inspire a focus on the future rather than a reliance on past narratives. So we have a rich set of issues to discuss, and I had the longest list yet this morning of people who want to intervene. I'll try to get 5 or 6 together before returning to the panel. So if you could each make your questions and comments brief, and I'll call first on Ragida Dergam.
Thank you very much, John. I will ask my question in Arabic to Minister Yousef bin Alawi.
Your Excellency, do you think that the deal of the century is now ready to be disclosed? What is this new movement that we are witnessing now in the Sultanate of Oman, and what is the role that you are playing? This is based on what you have mentioned, Your Excellency, but my main question goes to Yemen. You are probably exerting some efforts away from the lights. Mr. Mattis mentioned some calm negotiations that almost led to a result, but this did not happen. Was the Sultanate of Oman at the heart of these efforts? Are you capable of having an influence on Iran so that Iran helps in putting an end to this disaster in Yemen? What are the ideas that you can share with us regarding this issue? Have you discussed with Netanyahu the issue of Hezbollah in Lebanon, especially that he stood before the UN General Assembly and showed pictures including some details pertaining to places where missiles are being produced? Have you mentioned this issue with him? Do you expect any attack launched by Netanyahu against Hezbollah in Lebanon?
You will take 4 or 5 questions and then return to the panel. Could I ask next from Kuwait, Mishal Al-Faraj?
شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you. My question goes to His Excellency, the Minister from Oman, regarding the Gulf Cooperation Council, and I'm here speaking as a Gulf citizen. We all know that His Excellency has a close relationship with the GCC. He also was aware of the different difficulties that the GCC faced during its work. So my question is the following. What is the future of the GCC according to you? Do you believe that the GCC is capable of overcoming this crisis and to regain its role, its powerful role? Thank you.
And from Germany and the IISS, Dr. Bastian Giegerich.
John, thank you very much. I wanted to come back to the issue of the meeting in Istanbul, and I have a question for Minister von der Leyen. If you look at this initiative and the parties involved, I wanted to ask you what you think would be a good outcome to this meeting. What is your expectation with regards to the initiative in Istanbul? Thank you.
Thank you. And from Egypt, Mohammed El-Fayumi.
Thank you. I actually have 2 questions. The first one is for the German Defense Minister. I have a question regarding Syria. How do you qualify a satisfactory political process, and who are the parties that you would consider that they should be participant in the future of Syria? And also, how do you qualify the German position and the European position over the past 7 years, how it changed over, like from one position to another? السؤال الثاني لمعالي الوزير يوسف.
I have another question to Mr. Yousef bin Ali. It deals with the visit paid by the Israeli Prime Minister. How do you view the relationship with Israel in light of the Israeli attacks taking place currently? So rather than speaking of the past, when Mr. Netanyahu was paying his visit, Israeli forces were bombing Gaza and killing lots of civilians. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take one more question before going back to the panel. Jason Isaacson.
Thank you very much. I want to express my admiration and appreciation to Minister Ben Alawi and through him Sultan Qaboos for the very important steps that were taken in recent days. But I wanted to ask, beyond the issue of seeking to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, independent of that and maybe parallel to that, I wonder if he could speak to us about other efforts that he envisions for bringing Israel into regional cooperation.
Thank you very much. Well, with that, I might ask Ursula von der Leyen to address the question that was put to her, and then come to His Excellency Yousef bin Alawi, so Minister of Defense of Germany.
Thank you. John, concerning the ongoing meeting at the moment being in Istanbul, and John, you started your question about Astana, Istanbul, Geneva. Well, the Istanbul meeting, the goal is to revitalize the Geneva process. The Geneva process is the umbrella overall. And for the question, what would be a good outcome, if I may put it in a centerpiece, first of all, a centerpiece would be an inclusive, Syrian-led political process facilitated by the United Nations. And then there are, of course, milestones we try to achieve. The milestones are, for example, as soon as possible, convening the Constitutional Committee, a safe and voluntary return of refugees and displaced persons, and here I put emphasis on safe and voluntary. Of course, safe access for humanitarian organizations, and looking at Idlib, for example, the withdrawal of heavy weapons and radical groups from the demilitarized zone. So these are milestones where I hope they could be the outcome of the day. Of course, it is self-explaining, if I could put that in the front line, a commitment to fight Daesh and a strong opposition against the use of chemical weapons. It is crucial that all four parties, all four countries, commit themselves to these principles. And for the third question, a satisfying political process, well, of course, it includes, as I said, all parties, except, of course, terrorists like al-Nusra or Daesh. That would be a step forward. And once again, this meeting has the purpose to revitalize the Geneva process.
Yousef bin Alawi.
Thank you, John. I would like first to repeat some of the main facts that I've mentioned at the beginning. In case we cannot find a final solution to the Palestinian issue and to the Arab and Palestinian-Israeli conflict, there will not be any stability. And this applies to the neighboring countries of Palestine and Israel. The question that you have raised, ma'am, regarding the Israeli activities in the area, whether we're talking of the security activities or the military activities in Gaza or in the West Bank or elsewhere, this is what we are suffering from. So how are we going to solve it if we do not work on the establishment of the Palestinian state? Consequently, we are convinced more than ever that in case we do not solve this issue, the region won't know any stability. And terrorism will not be put to an end. Other names might appear other than Daesh if the countries of the region, if the Arab countries and Israel do not succeed because the cycle of violence will never stop? It's a long question, but this is in a nutshell what I can answer. Regarding the GCC, our colleague from Kuwait asked the question regarding the GCC. The GCC exists. Its role will not end. The member states are keen on preserving it. The disputes that it witnessed were not disputes targeting the GCC. Everybody is still committed to the agreements that were reached and to the decisions that were reached. There are now some efforts at the ministerial levels and the technical teams levels. There are also some steps in order to organize the Gulf Summit, as usual. Consequently, the GCC is here, and it's still playing its role. Maybe the activities are no longer extensive and intensive as they used to be, or maybe we are no longer resorting to the media as we used to do in the past regarding the GCC. But let me tell you once again that the GCC was established and strengthened, and it will stay. So this is my own conviction. Another question was raised. It deals with how it is possible for the Palestinian state to be established. And what about the efforts of the United States? The United States are the main country capable of finding a solution that everybody would accept, that no one would refuse and reject. And at the time being, we consider that there is no disagreement regarding the need to establish an independent Palestinian state. There's no disagreement whatsoever. We are maybe disagreeing regarding some details, and we believe that there are ideas that are developing, and that the deal of the century will take into account all of the ideas, because we, as others, do not want this endeavor, this proposal, or this deal, as it was named, to fail. And we are very optimistic. We hope that those who are listening to us and those who are reading the literature be optimistic and not pessimistic. And we hope that this process, even if it takes some time, will bear positive fruits. How can we involve Israel and prompt it to contribute to the affairs of the region? I'm going to say something that I say for the first time. Israel is a state that is present in this region, and we all understand this. We know this. The world is also aware of this fact. But despite that, Israel is not being treated by the other countries as it is treating the other countries. Maybe it is time for Israel to be treated the same, and it should also bear the same obligations as other countries. Why? Those are really facts. History says that the Torah saw the light in the Middle East, and that the prophets of Israel were born in the Middle East, and that the Jews also used to live in this area of the world. We are in a world that is developing, and Israel has capabilities that allow it to benefit and to be beneficial for others. the suffering of the Palestinians, the suffering of the Arabs, and also the suffering of Israelis and Jews all over the world. So Jews, when they visit the Middle East, hold different nationalities. They hold European and American nationalities and citizenship. But this is not what is requested. This is why we believe that in light of the current situation and in light of what we are witnessing, these things can become a reality, and this will be beneficial for the Palestinians and the Israelis alike. And it will pave the way also for the stability of the Middle East, because it is the most important area of the world. So I hope I was clear enough, and I hope that I clarified some ideas. However, we cannot exclude anyone. This area is one of the most generous, one of the most important areas of the world. So it makes no doubt that there are lots of complications.
Thank you very much. And draw another 6 or 7 people into this important discussion. Could I start, please, with Virginia Comely?
Thank you, John. My question is, was prompted by the remarks made by Italian Defense Minister Trenta, by Israeli, for all the panelists. Dottoressa Trenta, towards the end of your presentation, you hinted at the fact that perhaps we are not engaging all the critical actors. You also devoted quite a lot of time during your remarks to the role of social media and various technological tools that extremist groups are exploiting. I was wondering whether when you were talking about the critical actors that are missing in our conversations, you were also talking about tech companies and the private sector. One area of increasing interest for us at IISS in our conflict analysis team is really the role of private companies can play going forward towards conflict resolution and also towards stemming some of these security threats. So any views that you might have, and also your fellow panelists may have, on how we can engage those companies and how they can be more effective in helping us fight those challenges would be very welcome. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And from Yemen, Khaldun Bakhail.
Thank you very much. I'll be asking in Arabic language.
My question goes to Excellency Yousef bin Alawi. So as a Yemeni citizen, I would like first of all to thank the Sultan Qaboos and all his efforts that he is paying towards Yemen. So recently we were talking about lots of efforts in order to have, some communication between the Minister of Defense. So will the Houthis liberate him, and will they also liberate Mansour Hadi and General Ragab, as well as Mr. Mohammed Qahtan and the family of former President Ali Abdullah Saleh? And we have also heard that Oman will be hosting a roundtable regarding Yemen. Is this true?
Dr. Mohammed Al. Go ahead.
I will ask my question in Arabic. سؤالي إلى وزير.
My question goes to the Minister of Defense of Germany. Everybody wants a solution for the Yemeni crisis, and everybody wants it promptly. And the people of the region want to have this solution, as we said, promptly. And if we remember the national dialogue and the Gulf Initiative, as well as the negotiations of Kuwait, and to end with the negotiations and the dialogue that is taking place in Geneva, that was not assisted by the Houthis. So now my question is, can the European countries, namely Germany, to bring the Houthis to the table of negotiations, taking into consideration that they are a minority in a minority, and they will have their voice and their political representation? Or do they want to stay as a state inside the state and an armed militia? I think that the Europeans, more than others, will not accept such an example in their state. So why should they accept it in our countries? Thank you.
Maybe two more before we come back. Dr. Noura Al-Mazroui from the UAE.
Assalamu alaikum.
My question goes to Excellency Yousef bin Alawi. Yesterday you have hosted the Prime Minister of Israel. Is it considered as a recognition by Oman to the Zionist Israeli entity? Thank you.
Saudi Arabia, Abdullah Al-Sadoun.
To Minister von der Leyen, since 1948, all the problems in the Middle East because of the Arab-Israeli conflict. All the military coups, all the dictatorship, all the Iran interference with Hezbollah to liberate Palestine. So now it looks like we are just putting fire here and there, and we are not going to solve the problem of the Middle East. Palestinians are suffering more than any other country in the world. Now my question, what Europe, they are led by Germany, is doing to put pressure on Israel to have a peace and not just to keep building settlements and putting like a big jail in West Banks and Gaza. Always, when it comes to Israel, you get very hesitant to interfere. Are there going to be more cooperation with the United States and with what's going on now to help to settle the peace? And that is what's going to make the real peace in the Middle East and not just here and there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Minister Trenta first, then Minister von der Leyen, and the many questions, particularly on Yemen, also that were addressed to His Excellency Yousef bin Alawi. Minister Trenta.
Thank you for your question. I think that since conflict changed and their actors also changed with a big role, growing role of non-state actors, and I'm not speaking just about violent non-state actors, I'm speaking about media, as I told before. It is important to think if there is a role in the traditional diplomacy for what we can call a parallel diplomacy that is made by other actors. And I think that also tech companies and private sectors could have a role in conflict resolutions. In order to understand this, we have to see which is the interest of the local stakeholder in conflict resolution. They could have a big role, first because they have a network that is made by customers and is made by suppliers, national and international. So these other actors have some interest in the conflict solutions that can be represented through the tech company. This means that when we increase the number of subjects that want to overcome the conflict, we have more possibility to overcome it. Then they could find an opportunity in the conflict solution because private company can contribute to reconstruction, contribute in terms of work, in terms of funding. Finally, they are an opportunity because they can create jobs, and jobs are really, job creation is really a good way and it's to overcome a conflict. So I think that they also have to be considered.
Thank you very much. Minister von der Leyen.
Thank you. First of all, I want to answer the Yemen question concerning the Houthis, the armed militia. I do not have to tell anybody here in the room how horrible this war is going on and how much the people of Yemen are suffering. And there is a certain fatigue right now out of a catastrophic situation. And therefore, this might be the time for diplomacy now. That might be the window of opportunity that is open, that we could move forward in a more peaceful way. And therefore, looking at the question of the Houthis, I think we have to ask to the table all those who are willing to talk, who are willing to put down the arms. So the Houthis is not one homogeneous body, but there are different lines of interest or behavior in it. So those who are willing to talk, those are invited to the table, because our experience is that if you want sustainable and inclusive peace, it will only be possible if all those who are willing to work for compromise are invited. Nobody at the very end, when you look to the future, nobody will have 100% of his interests. But working on a compromise might be a step forward in the situation now, of course, including all those who are influencing the different parties, knowing that we need a solution for this, for the population, the people of Yemen, catastrophic situation now. Regarding the question on Germany's position towards Israel and the Palestinians. First of all, out of our historical content and out of conviction, we are standing absolutely ironclad at the side of Israel. This does not mean that we do not have issues. Of course, there are issues we have a different opinion, but it is very clear that we stand at the side of Israel. But we are convinced that the only solution in the area for the Palestinians and Israel is a two-state solution, and that this is the way forward to go. And therefore, we've seen, as has been said, the Palestinian population has suffered, the Israeli population has suffered. Now there is perhaps a window of opportunity to find a way forward, to put the past behind and to march together forwards. Therefore, as you know, Germany is heavily supporting Israel, but as well as that, we are funding UNRWA, for example, to make very sure, and this is the same principle like in Yemen, only if you listen to both sides, only if you take together those who are willing to step forward and to find a compromise, we will have a lasting and sustainable peace.
Thank you. Yousef bin Alawi.
Regarding Yemen, of course, in Yemen, I am convinced that in this room, nor in any other room, or in any other place where we talk about Yemen, no one but wants to see that Yemen has really gotten over the situation that it is living now. And we, as neighbors of Yemen, understand and are aware of the plight there. But we are not saying who is responsible for that, because everybody is responsible. We are not pointing to a side that is not responsible. We think that the role that is played by the United Nations and the Special Envoy is trying to get Yemen out of this catastrophic situation. But neither the UN envoy nor the Security Council can do anything if the Yemenis themselves do not agree. This is why in Yemen we still have the legitimacy. And I think that the legitimacy representatives have a very big responsibility on their heads, on their shoulders, for the Yemeni population to be able to get out of this situation and for them to start where they have ended, or to start over from any other point that they want to choose. And I think that all those who like Yemen and all the friends of Yemen are supporting such an orientation. I think now that the UN envoy is trying to build trust. And he may be at the start of the road. And I think that building trust amongst the Yemeni leaders is not difficult to achieve. But it is possible. So we will remain in touch with all the Yemeni sides. We in Oman are being trying to be neutral and to be at the same distance with everybody. And I think that we should not be categorizing Yemenis, because this does not allow to build any trust amongst them. We call upon them, and we call especially upon the political parties and political representatives to work for themselves and not against themselves. This is how the Yemenis need to work. And regarding the issue of the general, in fact, the Sultanate has really paid lots of efforts for him to have the opportunity to talk to his family and to be in touch with his family in Yemen. And in fact, this effort came within the efforts of the UN Special Envoy. And of course, this is a humanitarian issue. And since General Subehi is a known person and has his position amongst the Yemenis, the Houthis in Sana'a could but accept. And as I told you, the possibility to have a progress regarding this level, this is possible. And everybody needs to work towards this. But this has to come within the trust building amongst the Yemenis. This is possible in this context. And as you know, and as you are following this issue, in case Yemen gets over this situation, it will be able to stand up again and to come back again as a member of the League of Arab States and have its place on the Arab scene, because they have given a lot to the Arab nation. Now, regarding the recognition, this is an issue, an old issue, without any value anymore. After the signature of the peace conventions and treaties with Israel after the 70 war, we're talking about the future. We're not talking anymore about the past. We're not talking anymore about the slogans of the past. Israel, as I said, is a state of this region. And we need to deal with it positively for it to be dealing with us positively. This is the future. And as I said, we call upon the pessimists to start having hope and having the capacity of achieving this hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have one more round of questions. I may not be able to include anyone, but I'll do my best if everyone is crisp. From Australia, Billy McCarthy-Price.
Thank you, John, and thank you to the panel for your time today. You've all mentioned the importance of guaranteeing the security and prosperity of the Middle East for future generations and for the young people of the region. Young people are often the most significantly affected by conflict and instability. I wanted to know more about what you see as the role of young people in building peace and how they can be better incorporated into the co-design of diplomatic solutions.
Thank you. Nick Redmond.
Thank you. It's a question for Minister von der Leyen. You spoke powerfully and clearly about Jamal Khashoggi. Many Western states, like Germany, your allies, have promised that there will be consequences for bilateral relations as a result. Could you tell us why the murder of one man, however gruesome and sensational, has had greater political effect on Western policy towards Saudi Arabia than the conflict death of several thousand children in Yemen since 2015?
Philip Dunn from the UK.
Thank you. Could I just start by applauding the efforts of Minister Alawi and the Sultanate of Qaboos in bringing the Palestinian-Israeli issue back to the fore, and in particular for the statement that you've made today about the pragmatic way in which you're approaching this. And could I ask Minister von der Leyen and Minister Trenta what the position of Germany and Italy in respect to this initiative is, and whether or not you see the Middle Eastern Strategic Alliance as an opportunity to take this forward?
Thank you very much. And from the UAE, Zain Nassar.
Hello. My question is for German Defense Secretary. I would like to ask her that in the light of the impact of the Syrian conflict on German policy domestically, do we agree that the impact and the role of Germany and the effort presented by Chancellor Merkel to interfere personally and use the influence, huge influence that she has on on the Russian President Vladimir Putin is still far beyond what she could have done? And can she tell us more if such an influence can be seen in the meeting today taking place in Istanbul? Thank you.
Thank you. And from Bahrain, Mona Al-Moyad.
My question is to the Omani Minister, Yousef bin Alawi. I'm very happy to see the effort of...
Can you just speak a little bit louder? Thank you.
I am happy to see the effort of Oman to bring peace to the Middle East. But my question is to the Minister is, how can we start peace negotiation when Israel continues to occupy the Arab lands and bring settlement to the Arab lands? And secondly, treating Palestinians not as a first-class citizen, but as a second-class citizen. So with these two important factors, how can there be any development? And why would the USA and all the European countries who believe in human rights and they are talking all the time about equality, they see all this and they keep blind eyes to all these problems?
Bobby Gosh.
My question is to Minister von der Leyen. In the previous session, the Saudi foreign minister dismissed as irrelevant the German government's decision to suspend military and arms sales, saying that Saudi Arabia doesn't buy arms from Germany, so it doesn't matter. Should we expect to see other forms of other kinds of things being suspended as an expression of German dissatisfaction?
Thank you. And from France and the IISS, Dr. Lucie Béraud-Sudreau.
Thank you. My question is for the ministers from Italy and Germany, and also relates to the arms sales issue. So the war in Yemen has raised debates in Europe regarding the continuation of arms sales in the region. You represent two countries with different approaches to this issue. So first, could you tell us what is the current status of German and Italian arms transfers in the region? And do you think that arms export policies should be taken at a more coordinated approach at the European level? And if so, how to achieve this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ben Barry.
Thank you, John. This morning we heard very strong criticism of Iran's behavior from the United States, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia, and the US explained very clearly the very strong measures they're taking with Iran. Could I ask the three ministers if they agree?
Thank you. And the final question before I give a couple of minutes each to each of the panelists to respond to their questions, Dr. Efsen Al-Ketbi from the UAE.
Thank you, John.
My question goes to His Excellency Minister Ben Alawi. The meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, does it mean that there is now a new track, a parallel track, in order to solve the Palestinian issue? The main contentious point is Jerusalem. How are we going to solve it, especially in light of the transfer of the embassy? I have also another question to both ministers from Europe. You have mentioned non-state actors, and you have shed the light on Daesh. However, you did not mention the militias that were created by Iran in this area, like Hezbollah, Al-Hashd al-Shabi, the Houthis, and all those destabilizing groups in the region. Is it because you are adopting a double standards approach when it comes to the close relationships between Europe and Iran?
Thank you very much. That's a very rich set of questions. Could I just invite the ministers to take a couple of minutes each to answer those, because I think they're all very important, and I'll take them in order. If I could ask first Minister von der Leyen, then Minister Trenta, and we'll conclude with Yousef bin Alawi's final reflections and thoughts on these very important questions. Minister von der Leyen.
Yes, I will do my best to be brief and precise. First of all, on the topic of arms exports concerning Saudi Arabia, you all know that Germany has rules for arms exports that are restrictive, especially taking into account human rights situations, and that's why there will be no decision concerning exports to Saudi Arabia until there is clarity about the circumstances. They must be fully investigated and brought to light what the killing of Khashoggi is concerned, and we have heard today that there is willingness to do so, and this is regardless of the considerable political consequences that might be there. But first of all, the investigations have to end. But as I said, concerning the arms exports, there is a wider range that we are debating, and it's always linked to the situation of human rights. Second question was to Syria and the position of the Chancellor Merkel and the influence she might take or is taking. 3 years ago, we've learned our lesson with the refugee crisis that, if I may put it in simple words, Syria is the immediate neighborhood of Germany and Europe and not far away. And this is a good lesson to be learned. Therefore, we have understood how important it is that we care and that we work on solution in our immediate neighborhood, because it is in our own interest, it affects ourselves, and it is better for the whole regional context. Our approach in Germany is that, first of all, with the situation for the neighborhood and the refugees is concerned, we fight illegal migration but this does not mean that we do not foster and enhanced legal migration, but we fight human trafficking, we fight smuggling and illegal migration. Having said that, asylum is a very high value for us. Asylum completely independent of the nationality and other circumstances where the person who is applying for asylum is coming from. We know if we want to reduce the amount of organized crime around migration, and it is heavily organized crime that is going on there. If we want to reduce that, we have to fight the causes for migration, be it hunger, be it poverty, be it war or civil war, or be it terror. And therefore, looking at Syria, we are completely aware that it is in our interest that there is a lasting solution, a political solution in Syria, that it is being rebuilt under the premises I have been talking about in my short remarks, that of course it cannot be supporting the dictatorship of Assad in any way, but it has to be clarified that mainly the oppositional groups that have been suppressed and that have fled the countries have a voice that is heard and integrated in that process. Concerning the question of Iran and the JCPOA, we would have preferred to stay in the JCPOA, knowing that there are other issues we see very critical with Iran and we're constantly addressing. But it is absolutely clear for us that we know about the malicious activities Iran is having in the area, the influence of, from Iran on Hezbollah, and the activities that are behind it are being condemned by us. We see it as a very critical, but therefore in this case, what the JCPOA is concerned, we would have preferred to have this part of the contract that was working going on, knowing that there are other issues that have to be solved, and therefore no double standards at all for Iran, but a very critical approach for sure. Last question, young people in building peace and the future. It is the ultimate goal to hand over this world to our children, and I say this as a mother of 7, to hand over this world to our children in a state that is manageable for them. They have to tackle globalization. They have to tackle the digitalized future. They have to tackle the cyber world. They will have to tackle many, many other topics. And therefore, it's our duty not to leave them a fragmented world full of hatred and diversion, but to work hard on, as it has been said on the panel here, to let the past behind us, work for the future, work for reconciliation, be able to share interests, be able to see compromises and to step forward in compromise. Compromise always means that you do not have to insist on 100% of your own interest, but you have to accept that you move forward toward the other to find a common solution. Therefore, for the young people, this is the world we want to hand them over, but there is a second point which is absolutely crucial, and this is not the conference here to talk about it, but this is education, education, and once again, education. Most of the conflicts come of non-knowing about the others. Most of the conflicts come out of poverty, exclusion, not being able to have access to prosperity and to empowerment, and therefore education, education, and once again education, which is combined, of course, with the ability to express your own opinion, with the ability to put forward your own strategies as a human being with dignity. This is the key factor for the young people, and we all should commit ourselves to that.
Thank you very much. Minister Trenta.
About MESA, I think that yes, it can be a solution. provided that, as it was told before, it is a non-competitive balance of power, and I think that it will be a solution if it is not against someone else. So I hope MESA will maintain the dialogue with the outside environment. And about Yemen, Italy is not taking part, and I think this is a good way of dealing with this. And sure, a more coherent approach on EU level is welcome. And about militia, I'm absolutely not making any distinction among militia. Militia are always dangerous, and for us, we know very well them in Libya, and we know the effect that militia can make on conflict. It's not possible overcoming a conflict when militia are working. But about Iran, it's true that Italy has a long-standing tradition of collaboration, commercial and collaboration with Iran. This does not mean that it's not possible to have a double track on this. After all, you know that we are in Lebanon for many years, and we are there also to see and to look after the disarmament of Hezbollah.
Thank you very much. And final words and statements, which we'll all welcome, from Yousef bin Alawi.
Thank you, John. I think that I spoke a lot during this session, but it's not a problem. Regarding the Palestinian issue, it has been going on for more than 70 years, and it makes no doubt that there have been many proposals, many initiatives. But, however, all of them did not yet lead to an acceptable solution by all parties. You have the Arab Initiative, you have the Oslo agreements, you have the two-state solution, you also have the International Quartet, you have the UN Security Council resolutions. All of these elements deal with the Palestinian issue and with the Arab-Israeli conflict. They will all be taken into account when drafting the final solution, with the agreement of the relevant parties and stakeholders. We are not saying that the road is now very easy and paved with flowers, but our priority is to put an end to the conflict and to move to the new world. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Just in closing, did anyone have any doubt the main strategic issues of the day are aired most transparently at this dialogue? Diplomacy works in small steps, but sometimes also with great leaps. And one of the hardest leaps to make is to create a new narrative. We've heard elements of a new narrative today, and I think all of us have to give our warmest encouragement to all the genuine peacemakers, three of whom have been represented here on this panel. So thank you very much, and please support our panelists.